But before we get on to the Satipatṭhāna Sutta, I'm going to finish off the Buddha's instruction to the Kalamas. And then I will give you a quick summary of this sutta, just to so you can understand what it is, how it kind of fits in with the overall path and all of these kind of things. So we have seen how the Buddha shows to the Kalamas how you know what is unwholesome. Yeah, you know it through your own experience. This is one of the main ways of knowing this. And of course it helps to have a bit of guidance from the outside, but these things come together very nicely. Your experience comes together with the teachings, and when they fit together, that is when it becomes particularly powerful. Yeah, you know something is true because it makes sense from your own experience. And then once you have abandoned all of these wholesome qualities, then this is what happens next. Yeah, so we get this next passage here, and this is what the Buddha says. He says, then Kalamas, that noble disciple who is thus devoid of longing. Longing means like craving or desire, yeah? Devoid of ill will, unconfused, clearly comprehending, ever mindful, dwells pervading one quarter with a mind imbued with loving kindness. This is metta, of course, with a mind imbued with compassion, karuna, with a mind imbued with altruistic joy, mudita, with a mind imbued with equanimity, upekkha. And likewise the second quarter, the third quarter, and the fourth quarter. Thus above, below, across, and everywhere, to all as to himself, he dwells pervading the entire world, with a mind imbued with equanimity, vast, exalted, measureless, without enmity, without ill will. So this is a standard description you find in the suttas for how to develop the Brahma Viharas, the divine abidings, yeah, which is like metta is the main one of these Brahma Viharas. So this is how you develop the metta practice. And so what you see here, as always, the most important part is often the first part there. You have a mind devoid of craving, devoid of ill will. And when you have a mind which is devoid, without these defilements, that is when meditation starts. Metta meditation is just one other meditation, and all meditation is based on the same foundation. It's a foundation of purity. You have to have the purity of mind, first of all. When you have the purity of mind, there's no craving, ill will, and confusion there. Well, your mindfulness is clear. Yeah, I've been talking about mindfulness before. You just sit back, you wait for the mindfulness to arise. Only then are you ready for meditation practice. This, you see it right here with the Brahma Viharas. You see it later on with the Anapanasati. You see it in connection with Satipatṭhāna practice. All meditation is based on the same principle. First of all, mindfulness has to arise. The defilements have to disappear. Only then does meditation become possible. So this is such an important part of this path. And I will talk a bit more about metta later on, but just very briefly here you have the idea of being unconfused. This, what is the Pali here? I'm not sure what the Pali is for unconfused here. Amulho maybe, something like that. Clearly comprehending, this is sampajana. This is an important word in Pali. I'll talk about this later on. Ever mindful, yeah, mindfulness is there, so the defilements are gone, and what you have is mindfulness, and you have a degree of wisdom. Clearly comprehending is like the wisdom aspect, and I will discuss that later on as well. And only then do you get into this beautiful idea of pervading the whole world with a mind with loving kindness. And this is one of those interesting ways that loving kindness is described in the suttas. Very often the way people practice the metta practice is according to the Visuddhimagga approach. According to the Visuddhimagga, you start off with a person who is dear, someone who is dear to you, or someone who you see the positive qualities in, and then you go to the neutral person, and eventually you go to people, your enemy, metta towards the enemy as well. That's the really hard one. But according to the suttas, it's different. In the suttas, you do it to the directions rather than to individual people. And it's very interesting, a very different way. And one of the reasons for that is because in the suttas, you're already starting at a very high level. You already have the purity of mind. Yes, this is one of the reasons why I do that. But I like this approach because often when you do it to individuals, it is actually, there is always some problems with individuals, very hard. It can be very difficult to have like a pure metta towards an individual, because an individual is a very complex thing. They have a person has good qualities and negative qualities, and it can also be a degree of attachment, perhaps, can be all kind of problems with people. But if you do it to a direction, to just kind of the north or whatever, all of that interpersonal thing, it disappears. And often that metta can be more pure as a consequence. And this is how it is described in the suttas. So it's different from how it is often done in most meditation traditions. But I will get back to this later on. So what we have seen so far in this Kalama Sutta, what we have seen how the Buddha has kind of gradually, very skillfully taken someone who is at the very beginning of the path, who doesn't understand anything about Buddhism, someone who is completely confused. They don't know up from down or black from white. Yeah, these ascetics come, the other ascetics come, and they contradict each other. We have no idea what's going on. The Buddha then guides them to how to understand what is right through their own contemplation. And he gradually takes them all the way to the metta bhavana, the practice of metta, the practice of deep samadhi. Deep samadhi is implied by the metta, and he actually shows them the complete fulfillment of the Noble Eightfold Path, through this discourse. And this is one of the things that you see almost throughout the discourses of the Buddha. You see this kind of structure where you start off with the simple things, and gradually it goes deeper and deeper and deeper, all the way to the end point of the path. You see it right here in the Kalama Sutta as well. You may not even have noticed that that's what's going on, because you're not as used to reading the suttas as I am. I'm like a professional sutta reader. Yeah, this is me. And because I'm professional, I can see what is happening in the suttas. So what you see here is the whole Noble Eightfold Path gradually emerging. It starts off with right view. Right view is the Buddha tells the Kalamas, well, listen, this is how you look at things. See if it fits with your experience of life. If it does, then place faith in that. So he gives the Kalamas a right view that sila is important. That's kind of the beginning of right view. Sila, character, morality, this matters enormously. That is the beginning of right view. Then because of that right view, he tells the Kalamas, well, should you abandon these things? And they say, yes, well, that's their right intention, the second factor. Then they abandon it. They practice all the morality. The Buddha also shows that the root problem of morality is actually the mental defilements, the greed and the ill will. These are the root problems. This is like the Sammavayama or Sammapadana, which is the sixth factor of the Noble Eightfold Path, right effort, where you purify the mind. Then comes the Brahmaviharas. Brahmaviharas is here part for the last two factors of the path. The Satipatṭhāna and also the Samadhi come there. So the whole path is there. The whole development is there. The only thing which is missing is the final kind of breakthrough to awakening. I guess you can only take the Kalamas so far. But you practice the whole path, and you have kind of made the mind ready for awakening experience itself. This is what this sutta is. And many suttas are structured in this way. If you look carefully, you will see the whole path actually found in almost, in all the long suttas, you usually find the whole path in there, expressed in different ways, different angles, so that you gain different understanding of it. So let us just finish off the sutta. And the Buddha then ends up by what he says next is he is now underlining the benefit of this way of living. And he says to the Kalamas, this noble disciple Kalamas, whose mind is in this way without enmity, without ill will, undefiled and pure, he has won 4 assurances in this very life. The first assurance that they have won is this: if there is another world, if there is the fruit and result of good and bad deeds, it is possible. Actually, this is wrong. It's not, shouldn't be possible. I don't know why he has translated it this way, because it's actually a wrong translation. It actually means that It is not possible, but it is the case that with the breakup of the body after death, I will be reborn in a good destination, in a heavenly world. So you notice the way the Buddha is phrasing this. He doesn't say that there is rebirth. He says, if there is rebirth, then you will have made yourself a shelter. You have made yourself an assurance that you will go to a good destination after you pass away. And this is kind of the Buddha's skillful way. Instead of just telling you this is the way it is, especially to people like the Kalamas who are still trying to figure things out, they says, if there is rebirth, then you are okay. If there is not rebirth, what happens then? That's the next one. The second assurance he has one is this: if there is no rebirth, and there are no fruits and results of good and bad deeds, still, right here in this very life, I maintain myself in happiness, without enmity and ill will, free of trouble. So you win regardless. Regardless, it is good to practice metta. Whether there is another world, whether there is rebirth or not, doesn't matter so much. At the end, that is kind of, actually it matters a lot, but still, living well still is good, regardless of whether that's the case or not. So it means it is always the right thing to do. And then the third assurance, he says, suppose evil comes to one who does evil. Then, when I have no evil intention towards anyone, how can suffering afflict me, since I do no evil? This is just very similar to the previous one. The previous one's the idea that you, if you don't do anything bad, nothing bad can affect you. And I don't know about you, but if you look at yourself and you feel your mind, you know that sometimes your mind may feel not quite right. Maybe you are upset about something, your mind is not quite balanced or whatever it is. And sometimes when you are like that, that is often when you become fearful of things, when your mind is out of balance. That is when fear can arise. That's when fear of the future can come in. At other times, when you feel really good about yourself, you feel happy, you feel a sense of compassion and metta for the people around you, all fear just dissipates. You don't worry about the future anymore. You feel a natural sense of safety. And this is one of the great benefits of metta practice. The fear of the future tends to disappear. It is almost as if you know that the future will be a good one. It is an intuition that arises together with the purity of the mind and purity of the heart. If you have these good qualities, the future seems safe. Isn't that nice? No need for fear anymore. Most people are afraid of death. Death is like the big unknown. We don't know what's going to happen. We have to let go of everything in this world, and we don't know what the future holds for us. Obviously, it's going to be frightening for most people because it is so uncertain. But if you have a mind full of metta, you will have no fear of death anymore. It is almost as if you know that the future will look after itself. Notice that in yourself. Look at your mind, look at your heart. What does it feel like when you have a sense of purity inside of you compared to when your mind is defiled? And you will notice that actually that is one of the aspects of purity of mind, is the sense of ease, the sense of lack of fear for the future. It is almost as if you feel naturally safe. So there are some enormous benefits of metta practice. All of these things become part of that benefit. Anyway, so that is the third assurance. Nothing evil will come to me. You kind of know that as a matter of intuition. And the fourth assurance is as follows: suppose evil does not come to one who does not come to evil, then right here I see myself purified in both respects. You see yourself purified regardless of whether there is rebirth or not. I'm not sure exactly what is meant here by both respects. I have to admit it's a little bit cryptic. You wonder whether there is a corruption in the text because it doesn't really make 100% sense to me. But anyway, you see yourself purified. That's what matters. This noble disciple, Kalama, whose mind is in this way, without enmity, without ill will, undefiled and pure, has won these 4 assurances in this very life. Even if you haven't reached the full insight of the Buddhist path, still you have all these assurances as a consequence of the practice. And then the Kalama says, so it is, blessed one, so it is, fortunate one. Blessed One, Bhagava, Fortunate One, Sugato. This noble disciple whose mind is in this way, without enmity, without ill will, undefiled and pure, has won 4 assurances in this life. So you can see now they have really come around. The Buddha has used his magic, Dhamma magic, and brought them around, started them off. They were really uncertain, didn't know up from down and left from right. Now they have gained faith in the Dhamma. This, of course, is the whole point of teaching the Dhamma. People gain faith because they see that it actually works. So, and then at the very end of the sutta, it then says that they say, excellent, Bhante, we go for refuge to the Blessed One, to the Dhamma, and to the Sangha of bhikkhus. Let the Blessed One consider us lay followers who from today have gone for refuge for life. Okay, there you are, Kalama Sutta, Nittitang. Nittitang means complete, finished in Pali. Again, remember this basic idea that in the end you have to take responsibility for your own practice. So remember that to look carefully at these teachings, contemplate them in light of your own life, if it makes sense or not. And as you do so, you will either gain more confidence or you will lose confidence. In my experience, most people gain confidence because they actually find that these teachings really do make sense from one's own personal experience. But sometimes people have whatever, I don't know what it is, maybe they have deluded or something, they can't see these things. And if you can't see it, that's okay. You have to just go ahead and do your own thing. So that is the Kalama Sutta. And now we're going to move on to the Satipatṭhāna Sutta. And this sutta is a sutta that is very commonly taught in Buddhist circles, especially in the Theravada tradition. I'm not sure about the Mahayana tradition so much, but I think even in Mahayana sometimes we find the Satipatṭhāna Sutta. So for example, I know that one of the Prajna Paramita Suttas, which is the perfection of wisdom, which is one of the core suttas of the Mahayana tradition, actually includes large parts of the Satipatṭhāna Sutta within it. So this is one of the things about Mahayana. Mahayana is built on top of the early suttas. Because it is built on top of the early suttas, it often incorporates elements of the early suttas. So Prajna Paramita incorporates aspects of Satipatthāna. But it does not work the other way around. The early suttas never incorporate aspects of the Mahayana suttas. It never works that way. It is always in one direction. So you can see the evolution of the philosophy. It evolves from the early suttas to the new ones. It never goes the other way. And this is one of the ways we know what are the early suttas, because the philosophy moves in one direction, not in the other one. So the Satipatṭhāna Sutta is then very often said to be one of the most important suttas in the Pali Canon, or among the early suttas. So is that true? Is it one of the most important ones? Or is it not? What do you think? That's what people say. They claim this is really important, and then they put the Satipatṭhāna Sutta on there kind of together with the Buddha, and then they bow down to the Satipatthāna and worship the Satipatṭhāna Sutta, and then they chant it, and if you ask them whether they practice it, they usually say no, but they bow down to it. So why does this happen? Why is it really the case that the Satipatṭhāna Sutta is so important? How do we decide whether something is important? Is it important because some important monk says it is important? What about the Buddha? What did the Buddha say about the Satipatthāna? Did he say it was important? And this is kind of the interesting part. We have to think about these things for ourselves, not to just take on board what other people say and then kind of say sadhu. This is the problem with being a monk sometimes, Sometimes you give a talk and people say, regardless of what rubbish you say, people say sadhu and think it's wonderful. And I think, I want to say, that you shouldn't say sadhu, just talk rubbish. Think for yourself, for goodness sake. So this is important, So don't take these things on board as given. Reflect a little bit for yourself whether these things make sense or not. And the reality is that if you look at the sutta as overall, there is no real reason to make the Satipatṭhāna Sutta special. It is one sutta among many suttas. The Buddha never says anywhere that this is the most important one. He just says this is one sutta among many. So it is neither more important nor less important. It's just one sutta among many. And it is a fairly recent idea that somehow the Satipatṭhāna Sutta is more important than everything else. But actually, it does not seem to be borne out from the sutta. So we should take it seriously, but we should also just regard it as one of the other suttas. But because it is taught so often, it is still very useful to look at it in a little bit of detail, which is what we shall be doing here. So before, actually not before, let me just start off by just reading at the very beginning here, and then I will explain, give you some background information on Satipatṭhāna to be able to really understand what this is about. So, first of all, I have translated Satipatṭhāna as the applications of mindfulness. And that already is a little bit significant, because one of the common standard translations of Satipatṭhāna is the foundations of mindfulness. But the idea of a foundation of mindfulness gives the idea that this actually gives rise to mindfulness. If something is the foundation of mindfulness, it means that it causes mindfulness to arise. But that is not really what Satipatṭhāna is about. It's not about giving rise to mindfulness. It is about applying the mindfulness once it has arisen. First you give rise to mindfulness, then in Satipatṭhāna you apply it in a certain way so as to progress your meditation practice. So Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi, he translates as the establishings of mindfulness. I prefer the application, because that you actually use it, you apply it in a certain way. And personally, I think this is the right way, a better way, a preferable way of translating. And I will show you later on also why I prefer this translation. It makes a little bit of difference when you translate in different ways, because it gives you different feelings for what is going on. Anyway, this is how it goes. Thus have I heard, on one occasion the Blessed One was living in the Kuru country, where there was a town of the Kurus named Kammasadhamma. There he addressed the bhikkhus thus, Bhikkhus, Venerable Sir, they replied, and the Blessed One said this: Bhikkhus, this is the direct path for the purification of beings, for the surmounting of sorrow and lamentation, for the disappearance of pain and grief, for the attainment of the true way, for the realization of Nibbana, namely the 4 applications of mindfulness. I think the original sutta has foundations of mindfulness, but I have doctored the sutta a little bit. I've kind of put in my own preferred translation, so it looks like it might be Bhikkhu Bodhi, but actually that's actually my translation in there. So anyway, so here the Buddha is in the Kuru country. So this is like in the northwest from where he usually is, quite far away from the central Ganges plain where the Buddha usually would stay. And this is where he gives this particular sutta. Of course, straight away, when you see the way how the Buddha describes this, you get the feeling that this is important in the sense that this is a very important aspect of the path of practice. It is the path for the purification of beings. It says here direct path, but ekayana, the Pali word here, means something like the path which goes in one direction. It goes in one direction. This is what it means. So it is for the purification of beings. It is, in other words, it is the Visuddhi Magga, if you like. It is for the surmounting of all the problems, sorrow, lamentation, pain, and grief. And of course, this is why we practice the Buddhist path, for the ending of suffering. So that's why it is there. For the attainment of the true way. This is the Nyaya. The true way in Buddhism really just means like dependent origination is really what true way is. So if you want to attain and understand dependent origination, Satipatṭhāna practice also leads you there. And then lastly, you have the attainment of Nibbana, which is really the goal of the path. So all of these things revolve around the same thing: the attainment of insight, the attainment of understanding, the elimination of problems. This is what it revolves around. Now, how is it that Satipatṭhāna is said to have this ability to take you all the way. And the reason is that you have to understand Satipatthāna in context to understand why it has this ability. And understanding, usually it is the Noble Eightfold Path, which is what is said to have this ability. The Noble Eightfold Path is what takes you to Nibbana again and again and again. You find that in the suttas. So the reason why Satipatthāna here is singled out in this way is because Satipatthāna is not practiced in isolation. It is practiced as one element of the Noble Eightfold Path. And you see this in the suttas again and again. You see how Satipatthāna is said to be based on sila. It is based on right view, ujjukaditi. Because it's based on sila and right view, it is basically founded on the first 6 factors of the Noble Eightfold Path. They come first, and only then Satipatthāna arises. So straight away, when you see Satipatthāna here, actually we're talking about all the first 7 factors of the Noble Eightfold Path. Because you can't practice Satipatthāna without the first 6 factors. It comes together. And the other thing you realize is that Satipatthāna always leads to samadhi. In fact, samadhi and jhana is integral to Satipatthāna practice. And I shall show you why that is the case as we look at this sutta later on. So in a sense, all the 8 factors of the Noble Eightfold Path are implied in this. And this is why Satipatthāna can lead you all the way to awakening in this way. So to see this with more clarity, sometimes I wish these robes would attach a little bit more to my body. Sometimes attachment is good, right? The right kind of attachment is good. So, to see this with more clarity, remember the way the Noble Eightfold Path works. Noble Eightfold Path is a conditioned, is a one thing leading to the next one. The Noble Eightfold Path is not just 8 factors that you practice randomly. They actually occur in a certain sequence. And only when they occur in that sequence does the Noble Eightfold Path work properly. So it always starts off with the right view. Samaditi is the very first part of the Noble Eightfold Path. And this is why in the Kalama Suttas, the first thing the Buddha tries to do is to get the Kalamas to have some sort of right view. It starts off with the right view. From that right view, you then get the right intention, or the right aim. You start looking for, aiming for, you have a purpose which is meaningful in life. This is the second factor of the Noble Eightfold Path, Samma Sankappa. Samaditi, Samma Sankappa. Right view comes the right aim. Why is that? Because when you look at the world in the right way, then you start to pursue those things that are meaningful. If you look at the world in the wrong way, how are you going to be able to pursue things that are meaningful? You have deluded about the world. You cannot pursue meaningful things. You pursue things that are shallow, things that are meaningless. Fame and money and all this kind of stuff, which doesn't really lead to any lasting satisfaction. And then when you die, you have to leave everything behind. You can't take it with you. So it's kind of empty, a lot of that stuff. So you start to pursue things that are more meaningful, that are much more satisfactory. So from right view comes the right intention, the right purpose, the right aim. You start to move in the right direction. And the beginning of that movement in the right direction is the sila. Is the next one, Samma Vaca, Samma Kamanta, Samma Ajiva. The next 3 factors of the Noble Eightfold Path are all about the sila, the morality, and the virtue. So you start to do all of that. Then, based on that, comes Samma Vayama. This is the 6th factor of the Noble Eightfold Path, Sammapadana or Samma Vayama, which is right effort. And the main aspect of right effort is to purify our minds, learning how to think in the right way, learning how to look at people in such a way that our defilements go down. And I will talk about this later on. How to look at other people is very, very useful because it's very simple. It's a small shift in perception makes a massive difference in whether we get angry and upset or whether we have patience, whether we have kindness and compassion to the people around us. Just a tiny shift in perception, and suddenly, bang, you don't get so angry anymore and upset. Even when people, say bad things to you, that happens all the time. Do people say bad things to you in Hong Kong? Is that like everywhere else? Yeah, usually it's the same everywhere. Yeah, so the world, people are the same wherever you go. So people always say things that they shouldn't say. And this is one of the difficult things to deal with. But if you look at these things in the right way, you don't get upset anymore. Instead, you have compassion or something like that. Small shift in perception makes a massive difference. This is what Samma Vayama, Sammapadana is about. Now you are really getting pure. You are purified your ordinary virtue. Now you are purifying your mind. When the mind reaches a certain stage of purification, mindfulness becomes strong. Why? Because the defilements of the mind are what takes you out of mindfulness. If you have desires, you go into the future. Ill will is often about the past. You cannot stay in the present moment. Give up those defilements. Present moment becomes possible. That is when meditation starts. That is where Satipatthāna becomes possible. This is why all of these factors have to be in place before Satipatthāna can be done. Yeah, you can see it's a beautiful, very logical thing, the Buddhist path. It is not just a random kind of number of factors whacked together. Yeah, it is actually logical. It works according to certain principles. And if you understand those principles, you will be able to understand what you have to do and how you can practice this path to the best of your ability. You see what I'm talking about? Does it make sense? Yeah. If it doesn't make sense, please let me know, because sometimes maybe I speak too fast. Maybe my Norwegian accent is incomprehensible to people in Hong Kong. I don't know. Yes, so give you the opportunity. Please ask later on if there is any problems with what I'm saying. And then, after you practice Satipatthāna, comes the last factor of the Noble Eightfold Path, which is Samma Samadhi, the jhanas. From Satipatthāna practice comes Samadhi. Yeah, this is another very important idea. Usually we think of Satipatthāna gives rise to insight, but according to the Noble Eightfold Path, according to the structure of how these factors work together, it is always Satipatthāna leading to Samadhi. It leads to jhanas. And this gives you an idea what Satipatthāna practice is all about. The purpose of Satipatthāna is to make the mind ready for Samadhi, for real stillness, for real bliss, for real happiness, for real peace and real quietness, so that then you can have the insights later on. This is how it works. So Satipatthāna is about making the mind ready for that. So what does that mean? It means that any last remaining defilements of the mind, they are abandoned. Yeah, you do the Samma Vayama, the right effort to the best of your ability. You abandon a large amount of defilements that way. There will be a little remnant left. That last remnant is abandoned through Satipatthāna practice. And then it brings the mind together, merges it together, and then eventually it gives rise to Samadhi. That is what Satipatthāna is about. So this is Satipatthāna practice. Now you have some idea of the purpose, how it works. Yeah, you can see it in context. And this is very useful when we're going to read the sutta later on, because it will help us in interpreting the sutta in the right way. To be able to understand an individual sutta, you have to know the overall suttas and see the overall framework to fit it in. Then you will see how it works and how it fits together. Otherwise, it's very difficult to understand. So remember this, Satipatthāna based on virtue. Virtue, morality is the foundation that makes Satipatthāna possible. This is a very simple thing to remember if you want to remember anything about Satipatthāna. Second thing, it should lead to Samadhi. It should lead to profound meditation experiences. Yeah. The third thing to remember about Satipatthāna is that it can be achieved. The entire practice of Satipatthāna can be achieved simply by watching the breath. It's all you have to do. The Satipatṭhāna Sutta may seem very complicated. There's all these different exercises that you're supposed to do according to the sutta. Actually, you don't have to do any of that. All you have to do is watch the breath. The Buddha says specifically that all the 4 Satipatthānas are fulfilled and completed and satisfied simply by watching the breath. Isn't that good news? So simple, yeah? Don't have to worry about all this exercise, just all you have to do is watch the breath. Nothing is simpler than that, so it's really good news. Make things simple. I love to simplify things because everything is already too complicated. So simplify things to the max. I think that's really, really, really useful. So just watch the breath. Be kind, then watch the breath. then become enlightened. Yeah, that's the path. So really, really simple. Sila, Samadhi, Panya. That's what it comes down to. It sounds so complicated because I talk so much. I apologize for talking so much. It's probably my fault, but actually it's so simple. Yeah, and so if you come away from this thinking, oh, such a headache. I thought I was going to learn something, but all I have is this confusion of ideas in my mind. Well, that's my fault. It actually is really, really simple. And the reason I talk so much is, I don't know why I talk so much. I should probably just be quiet. It's terrible. Anyway, you get the idea, yeah? So now, having kind of laid the foundation for what Satipatthāna is about, we're going to have a break. So let's have a 10-minute break and come back again at about 20 past 10, and then we'll continue then. Okay, so let us get into the Satipatṭhāna Sutta. And the next paragraph here is like a summary of the Satipatthāna. This summary is what you see everywhere in the suttas, and this is kind of the standard way that it is described. So I will just talk about the summary a little bit because it gives a lot of information about how Satipatthāna is practiced in the right way. So it's important to get a feeling for what this is all about. And this is how it goes. What are the four? What are these four Satipatthānas? And here, monks, someone, a bhikkhu, a bhikkhuni, an upasika, a lay follower, abides contemplating the body as a body, ardent, fully aware and mindful, having put away covetousness and grief for the world. They abide contemplating feelings as feelings, ardent, fully aware and mindful, having put away covetousness and grief for the world. They abide contemplating mind as mind, ardent, fully aware and mindful, having put away covetousness and grief for the world. And they abide contemplating mind objects as mind objects, ardent, fully aware and mindful, having put away covetousness and grief for the world. And this is one of the reasons why people find the sutta so hard, because you wonder, what on earth does this mean? It's quite strange, isn't it, the way this is put? It's quite unusual. Body as a body, covetousness and grief for the world. All of these things are kind of ardent. All of these things are kind of slightly cryptic, and it's difficult to really get a good understanding of this unless you have a good overview of the suttas. So for this reason, I'm going to spend a little bit of time at kind of unpacking this and draw out the implications and also point out what might have been a better way of translating this. Sometimes the translations are done in too technical a way, which makes it hard to really grasp what is going on. The translation should, in my opinion, be as transparent as possible to be able to grasp what is going on. The purpose of these teachings is for practice. It's not some kind of intellectual exercise, and you show kind of how clever you are by being able to understand it. The whole purpose is to be simple, direct, immediate, so that we can put these things into practice. So, let us start from the beginning here. A bhikkhu abides. A bhikkhu here is like means anyone. The reason why bhikkhus are always put to the fore in this way is because the bhikkhus would have been maybe the main part of the audience. It's because very often when the Buddha speaks, he addresses the talk to the most senior people in the audience. And the bhikkhus would often have been the most senior because they were ordained first, and the bhikkhunis and lay people came later on. So even though it is said here, bhikkhus, it actually includes quite possibly bhikkhunis in the audience, quite possibly lay people would be there as well. So this is not just to the bhikkhus, it is to everyone. So please don't feel that you are excluded. You are also included in this. So this is an important principle to understand how they actually spoke in those days. When you understand that, again, you can see that this actually is applicable to everyone. So you abide contemplating a body as a body. What does contemplate mean? And contemplate means can mean basically can mean different things, and it can mean, for example, an exercise in visualization. Yeah, it can mean that. It can mean like watching the breath. It just means being aware. It can mean being aware. And it can mean reflecting on things. It can mean like understanding causality, understanding why am I getting upset? What is driving this upset? Why am I getting some desires? What is driving this? And all of these things are contemplation. They are reflection according to Dhamma. Anupassana is the Pali word. Anupassana literally means to look along with, to see along with. So the breath is there and you see along with the breath. It means you contemplate the breath. You are aware of the breath. So this is anupassana. It's quite broad in the way it is applied in this particular context. And I will show you later on how to apply it. A body as a body, kaya anupassi. What this really means is that there are many aspects of the body. There are many different ways of looking at the body. So what this refers to, it refers to you contemplate a certain aspect of the body, a certain part of the body. So for example, you might watch the breath. The breath is one kind of body, one kind of way of looking at the body. The breath is called the body in its own right. So you're watching that part, that aspect. Or you can watch the body as the four elements. The four elements contemplation, earth, water, air and fire. It's like the ancient way of building up physical matter. It's built up in this way. So you contemplate the body in that way. That's another aspect. Cemetery contemplation, 31 parts of the body is another one. All of these things. So it just means you contemplate a particular way of contemplating the body or an aspect of the body. The body as a body is a little bit strange and cryptic, but that's really what it refers to. And then you have these other words here, ardent, fully aware, and mindful. And these are words that qualify how the contemplation is supposed to happen. The word ardent in Pali is atapi. Atapi basically means that you do it with energy. Your mind is energized. In other words, you have reduced the defilements of the mind, and one of the things that you find when your meditation is going well, that your mind becomes energized. There's a natural energy and brightness in the mind as a consequence of the practice, and that energy is what you bring to your meditation practice. I'm sure you will have noticed that in the mind. Sometimes the mind is really dull and has no energy to it, It's like you almost falling asleep, or it's kind of really dark inside, you kind of, whatever. At other times, the mind is bright and energetic, And it all depends on how well rested you are. It depends on how much you have developed the path and all of these factors. But Satipatthāna and mindfulness of breathing should ideally happen when the mind is energetic, It is not, energetic does not mean that you put in a lot of effort. That's something else, because putting in effort means using the willpower. This is not about using willpower. What energy means here is the natural energy when the mind is just bright and awake and clear. It's a natural energy that comes as a consequence of practice. These are two quite different things in the suttas. Energy is called virya in Pali. Effort is called padana. And they are not exactly the same. One is something you put forth, you use a little bit of willpower. The other one is a naturally occurring thing in the mind. That is the best kind of energy, when it occurs naturally, because it's easy, it's relaxed. It's something you can sustain easily. You don't have to kind of put forth a lot of effort. So this is why Ajahn Brahm always says, when he teaches meditation, just sit back, relax and enjoy. No effort is required, because you try to tap into that natural energy of the mind. That's kind of the purpose of that. In the early stages of Satipatthāna, you may have to put forth a little bit of effort. You can't just be completely relaxed. But the idea is to be as relaxed as possible, and the energy to be as natural as possible. So that is what atapi means, ardent. Ardent is quite an unusual English word. You don't hear many people use the word ardent in daily life. It's very rare, and so sometimes people ask themselves. And this is why sometimes you have to have have a dictionary together with Bhikkhu Bodhi's translations, because he uses words that people don't normally use. Fully aware. This is sampajjhana in Pali. Sometimes can be translated as clear comprehension. And this is very closely related to sati, to mindfulness. Very often in the sutta, as you see, sati, sampajanya, these words are conjoined. You have mindfulness and you have full awareness. You have clear comprehension at the same time. They go together. What is the difference between these two? And this is something you often get asked. Yeah, how do we distinguish between sati and sampajanya? What is the difference between these? And sati is just the basic ability to be aware, to be in the present moment. Yeah. You are aware of what's happening here. You have clarity. You're not kind of being pulled around by future, past, fantasies, all these kind of things. The bare ability to be aware. But being aware is not enough, because you also need to know what to be aware of. You need to know whether you are aware of the right thing. You need to guide yourself continuously. So let's say you're watching the breath, and suddenly you are listening to the sounds or whatever. Well, if you're listening to the sounds, you're no longer watching the breath, so you are aware of the wrong thing. And it's sampajanya, it's that wisdom aspect that tells you, now I'm doing the wrong thing. Yeah? And then come back to the breath again. That's what sampajanya is all about. But sampajanya is a very broad category in Buddhism, and it's something that goes along all the way along the path. You use sampajanya. And basically what it does, it tells you whether right now you are doing something, you're doing that which is conducive to developing the path or not. Yeah, at this moment, let's say that you are at work, for example. Yeah, okay, work is neutral. Work is okay. It's not neither good nor bad. It's kind of neutral. Yeah, but then suddenly you feel so happy because you think, wow, I'm doing this work and I'm helping out my fellow workers and I'm making the customer happy, and you feel really happy about your work. You feel you're doing something good. Yeah, that's a positive attitude. It's an appreciation of what you're doing. So you know that you're actually working with the right attitude. At another time you feel a bit grumpy, you feel maybe your boss is too demanding, whatever, you have to work too many hours, and you realize, wait a minute, I'm getting grumpy. Sampajanya tells you that you're actually going the opposite direction of what you're supposed to be doing. So sampajanya is that which tells you whether you are fulfilling the purpose of the Noble Eightfold Path, whether what you're doing is suitable for development of your spiritual practice. That's what sampajanya is. So you need it throughout your day, throughout your life, whether you are here at the Kadura Center or at work or at home or on holidays in Bali or whatever it is. Do you ever go to holidays in Bali? Yeah, you do? Okay, good. I got the right place then. Okay, so this is kind of how things go. Yeah, this is how to use sampajanya, and in meditation practice, it becomes particularly important. Obviously, you bring it into meditation because then you know whether what you're doing is right or not. So here it becomes particularly meaningful. So you know whether you are watching the object. You also know whether you're watching the object in the right way. It has to be in the way which leads to peace and stillness and all these kind of things. And this is what happens here. Sampajanya, in brief. Then we have, the next word is mindful. Sati, sato. Yeah? So this is how you do satipatthāna. You are mindful. So what this means is that you have to be mindful before you do satipatthāna practice. It is one of the requisites. It's one of the, and this is why I said before that satipatthāna is not giving rise to mindfulness, it's applying mindfulness in the right way. It says right here, you have to be mindful to be able to do satipatthāna. Yeah, so mindfulness already has to be developed on this path, and that is why you have all these other 6 factors of the Noble Eightfold Path come first. Then comes satipatthāna, because it's only by developing those other factors that sati becomes possible. Sati is a consequence of how you live your life. If you live well, if you live with kindness, mindfulness is going to be much more powerful as a consequence. And then comes this last little phrase here, having put away covetousness and grief for the world. This is really quite bad, to be honest with you. I really don't like this translation at all, because what it actually means, grief is like when somebody dies, and you feel really sad. That's grief usually. And covetousness means you want the property of others. But you know, like the 10 Commandments, yeah, thou shalt not, Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's property or something like that. Do you know the 10 Commandments? Yeah, Christianity, Ten Commandments. I barely know them myself because I grew up in a non-religious family. But something like that. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's property. So this is covetousness. But really, this is not what it means here. What it means here is that you should not have desire or aversion for the objects of the five senses. This is what this means. Yeah, abhijja is the Pali word. Abhijja is a synonym for kamachanda. Kamachanda means sensual desire, anything which comes through the five senses that you desire. That is the problem here. So this is what this refers to. So it means something like desire and aversion. Desire and aversion are like two opposites. Yeah, you can desire the things that come through the five senses, or you can dislike it. If you dislike it, it's like you have aversion towards it. So it can mean liking and disliking, desire and aversion. So this is what we are trying to get rid of here. We're trying to put it away, to abandon it. Yeah, and you have to do this before you do Satipatthāna practice. That's why it says, having put these things away, this is part of the preliminary practice that leads up to the Satipatthāna practice. So you abandon desire and aversion for what exactly? It says here, in regard to the world. It says for the world, but the word world here in Pali, loka, is a very broad word, and what it means in this context is probably the world of the five senses. Yeah, it is actually used in that sense elsewhere in the sutta, so the world of the five senses, because that is where we tend to have desires and aversions. So you put away the desire and aversion for the five senses. Yeah, why is that so important? What is this all about? And this is what I mentioned briefly before. If you're going to be able to be mindful, you cannot have too much ill will or desire in the mind. If you have desire, your mind is going to be run by that desire. You're going to think about those things. You're going to be in the future. If you have ill will or you are upset with somebody, very often your mind is going to be in the past. You're going to think about, they said that, wow, they shouldn't have, that was really unfair, that was, whatever it is. So your mind is going to be preoccupied by that. By putting away these two basic hindrances, these two basic problems, that is where mindfulness becomes possible, because you're no longer concerned about things in the future and things in the past. So this is why this is so important, and this is why this is the job of the previous factors of the Noble Eightfold Path, to put those away. Right effort is a very important part of this. Right effort is that which directs the mind in the right direction, so you can put away these negative tendencies of the mind. So you have put those away, and that's why you have mindfulness there, and you're ready to do the Satipatthāna practice. And then you contemplate the body in various ways. Why do we contemplate the body? What is the purpose of that? Maybe I shall talk about that later on, but there is a certain sequence here. Yeah, body, then feelings, then mind objects, or principles, or whatever you want to call it. There is a certain sequence here. And the reason why things are done in this sequence is because this is how you gradually purify your mind. So you start with the coarser things. The body is like the coarsest things, the thing which stops us from going deeper in meditation very often. So you contemplate the body to abandon those coarser defilements, to purify the mind gradually, and then leading on towards samadhi as a consequence. This is why the body is first. We can release the body a little bit, have less attachment to it. But I'll get back to that later on once we get into these various exercises, with various ways of actually contemplating this. So that is in brief how to look at that. Yeah, it is that gives you some idea of what is going on here. So you can see a lot of things have to be kind of ready beforehand, but all of those things can be summarized with, in one way, purity. You have to have a fairly pure mind. That's really the summarizing of that, with a little bit of right view on top. Then you have exactly the same thing with contemplating feelings as feelings. It means that you contemplate some feelings among all feelings. Yeah, that's really what it means. Contemplating mind as mind means you contemplate certain qualities of mind among all qualities of mind. Contemplating, the last one is here called mind objects. What it really refers to is, like here specifically, it refers to what we might call principles of Dhamma. It refers to causality. Here it is about understanding the defilements, really. Why do defilements arise in your mind? Why is it that you get desire? Why is it that you get ill will? And by understanding this causality, it enables you to abandon these things in the future. Everything in Buddhism is about causality, understanding why things appear. The more you understand that, the easier it is to pursue this path and practice it in the right way. That is the principles, Dhamma principles. So that is the Satipatthanas in brief. And now let us have a look at them in more detail. Okay. So, let us just start with you can see there's little dots there, little kind of 3 dots. So I have kind of left quite a bit out. I will explain afterwards why I have left things out. But let's just look at the very first part here first of all. Again, bhikkhus, a bhikkhu or bhikkhuni or anyone who is practicing Satipatthāna reviews this same body up from the soles of the feet and down from the top of the hair, bounded by skin, as full of many kinds of impurity. Thus, in this body there are head hairs, body hairs, nails, teeth, skin, flesh, sinews, bones, bone marrow, kidneys, heart, liver, diaphragm, spleen, lungs, intestines, mesentery, contents of the stomach, feces, bile, phlegm, pus, blood, sweat, fat, tears, grease, spittle, snot, oil of the joints, and urine. Just as though they were a bag with an opening at both ends, full of many sorts of grain, such as hill rice, red rice, beans, peas, millet, white rice. And a man with good eyes were to open it and review it thus: this is hill rice, this is red rice, these are beans, these are peas, this is millet, this is white rice. So too, a bhikkhu reviews this body in the same way, all of those various parts, as full of many kind of impurities, from head hairs to urine. So this is the contemplation of the body. Yeah, this is kind of one of the main ways of contemplating the body, and now you know why this actually works and why this is what is the purpose of this. The purpose is to give rise to a detachment towards the body, and you can see why. Yeah, because you're looking at the body, you're being very realistic about it. You're looking what is actually there instead of just looking at the surface. And if you do this kind of exercise, you find that your attachment to the body will decrease if you do it in the right way. So first of all, before I say anything more about how to do this, I would just like to say that this is, I wouldn't necessarily recommend you to do this kind of exercise. Yeah, you have to be really committed to the Buddhist path to do this kind of thing. And the reason you have to be committed is because most people, if you live an ordinary life, you're always, we live in relationships, we have our pleasures in life. And if you live in an ordinary relationship and you try to do this, it's like two things, like positive and negative, kind of clashing with each other. So it's really, this kind of exercise is really for people who are very committed to the path, people who perhaps live by themselves, who already you live alone and all you do is pretty much your Buddhist practice. Then this kind of practice is very useful. But for most people, I wouldn't recommend it, because in the end, if you try to do this when you're living in a relationship, the relationship is always going to win out, because that is where you find your happiness very often. That is going to win out, and this is not going to be able to work properly for you. And anyway, for most people, it is far more important to overcome things like ill will and upset. This is much more important to work on than to work on the sensual pleasures and sensual desires. And the Buddha says as much in the suttas. He says that if you compare ill will and desires, ill will is far more blameworthy than desires. Ill will is so destructive in our relationships. We feel terrible when you get angry with someone else. So work with that. And the Buddha also says it's far easier to get rid of ill will than it is to get rid of sensual desires. Desires are very sticky. And the reason they are sticky is because we get a fair amount of happiness through the desires. and through pursuing that. Whereas the ill will is kind of much easier to see the problem with it. So I would recommend you to focus on the ill will and the anger. Much more useful. Already it is difficult enough, but it is easier than to deal with the desires. If you are incredibly committed onto the Buddhist path, if you are kind of on the highway to becoming a monastic and highway to enlightenment and all of that, great, you can try this. But otherwise, I wouldn't really recommend it, because you might just get fed up with Buddhism, because you think, well, this is just too much. I didn't come here for this kind of stuff. I came here to be happy. Ajahn Brahm says Buddhism is all about happiness. So what has this got to do with happiness? This just makes you feel miserable. And it can make you feel a bit miserable if you do it in the wrong way. So this is my first thing I would like to. The reason I'm bringing it up now is just because it is there in the Satipatṭhāna Sutta. So I thought I might as well talk about it, just to kind of to show you the full scope of this. And I'll show you an alternative way of looking at this later on. So anyway, having said that, how do we do this? So this is really an exercise in imagination. You look at your body, you think, okay, lungs, lungs. Heart in here somewhere, liver, and you kind of visualize these things. You know what it looks like roughly, liver like this, heart roughly like that, and you can kind of see it inside your own body. I don't know if you have seen. There was a German doctor called Dr. Günther von Hagen, the plastination. Did you see that? He plastinates bodies. He takes the bodies, takes all the skin off when people are dead, of course, not before they're dead. He takes all the skin off. And he injects the body with some kind of silicon or something, so the body is preserved. He drains the fluid out. I don't know how he does it. And then he injects some kind of silicon, so the body is preserved exactly as it is. And then he takes all the skin off, and then he kind of puts them out in exhibitions, so you can kind of see real human bodies. And I have seen that. And look, it's kind of cool. There you are. The body is right there, and this is exactly what we all look like. That inside, under the skin, this is what we look like. It gives you some feeling for the human body and what we actually look like. So beauty is only skin deep, and ugly goes all the way to the bottom. That's what you realize when you see this kind of thing. It's not really ugly, but it's just kind of, this is the functions of the body. The body works in this way. So if you look at your body in this way, and you kind of use your imagination to know what it is like, then after a while you start to feel less attracted to the body. It should always be focusing on yourself, not on other people. The focus should be on your own body. And as you do that, the desire for the body gradually fades away. And it can get to the point when you feel, I don't want to have anything to do with that body anymore. You feel almost like a sense of aversion. But a positive kind of aversion, where you are just repelled, not kind of angry or negative, just a sense of repulsion from the physical body, can be quite a strong feeling. Yuck, okay, then you go somewhere else, you go to the mind instead. So the purpose of this is not to bring up some, to kind of commit suicide or anything like that, And that is actually, and this is something happened somewhere in the sutta. That's why I'm saying that. That's not the purpose. The purpose is to even the mind out. The mind finds a nice balance because you're no longer attracted to the bodies. A large part of desire has actually been abandoned right there. You can imagine if you don't have any much anger in your life and you don't have any much desire in this particular sense, your mind is going to be incredibly even. You're going to go through the day with a very even mind. It doesn't have all these fluctuations up and down like the mind usually has. Even mind, and that even mind is a very suitable one for meditation practice. You kind of flow through the day. You're no longer being kind of bullied around by all the defilements. The defilements kind of are the bullies that bully us around, make us happy one moment and depressed the next moment, and then sad and then happy again, and kind of this yo-yo effect in our minds. Instead, you kind of just observe the world around you in a very even way. You have a degree of mindfulness wherever you are, and you don't have this kind of being pulled around, pushed around by the worldly phenomena. It's very nice when that happens, because what happens is that you start to feel in charge of your own life. Would you like to be in charge of your own life? Or would you like kind of external phenomena to always boss you around? It's really, really nice to have a sense of being in charge of your own life, to be in charge of your own mind. It is called the Adipatteya, I think in the Pali Suttas, it means that you are ruled by mindfulness. You feel that you are in charge instead of the world being in control of you. Yeah, you start to feel empowered in a very profound sense, that evenness. And then when you sit down to meditate, the meditation starts to happen because your mind is ready. So this is what this is. It's just a visualization of the body to abandon these kind of problems that we have, attachment to the body. I would only recommend this if you are really, really keen on the Buddhist path. So what is the alternative? How else can we do this? And I said just a second ago that there is this three little dots there. It means that I've taken something out. What have I taken out? And one of the things that I have taken out is the anapanasati, the mindfulness of breathing. Because the mindfulness of breathing is right there in the Satipatṭhāna Sutta. Yeah? Anapanasati, the mindfulness of breathing, the way it is explained, and we will see this later on when we get to the Anapanasati Sutta. It's a very powerful and beautiful sutta, in my opinion. It has 16 steps. And the first 4 steps are actually included right here in the Satipatṭhāna Sutta as part of the Kaya Nupassana. Kaya Nupassana, contemplation of the body. Yeah, why is that? And the reason is, the Buddha says, because the breath is one type of body among many types of bodies. So one way of contemplating the body is just to watch the breath. So instead of doing the 31 parts of the body contemplation, if you watch the breath in the right way, you are doing Satipatthāna practice. That's all you have to do. Don't have to kind of pull the body apart. Don't have to do things that you don't like. Okay, do things that you enjoy on this path. And that is usually one of the best ways of having progress. So if you enjoy Anapanasati a little bit, if you don't even enjoy that, fine, do something even simpler, just be kind. If you don't enjoy being kind, not sure what to do then. That gets more difficult. Please enjoy being kind. Yeah, that's an important one. But do what you enjoy, because as you enjoy, you will develop. And as you develop, new doors will open up for you, new possibilities, new avenues. And then your practice will kind of happen as a consequence of that. So just come to the breath. That's what I recommend people to do. That's difficult enough already. Yeah, I'm sure you will know what I'm talking about. It's already hard enough to watch the breath. So come back to those very simple things and then develop from there and use that. The breath, the reason I have taken it out is because the breath does not really belong in the Kaya Nupassana section. The breath is something which fulfills all the 4 Satipatthānas. If it is put into the Kaya Nupassana, if it's put in here next to the 31 parts of the body, it means that it is limited. It is limited just to contemplation of body, when actually it should really refer to all 4 Satipatthānas. So why is it there? If it is, what is going on here? And what is going on? And this is, I'm not going to spend too much time on this because it gets a bit complicated. But this is a very nice book that was written by, I mentioned Ajahn Sujata before, one of the monks that stayed at our monastery over the rains retreat, and I've known him for over 20 years. He's a very good friend of mine, and he's also a disciple of Ajahn Brahma. And he wrote a big book called The History of Mindfulness, where he analyzes the Satipatṭhāna Sutta and compares it to the version in Chinese, the version in the Abhidhamma, the version in the Prajnaparamita Sutta, various kind of versions. And he found that the Anapanasati element in the Satipatṭhāna Sutta doesn't really belong there. It is a later addition. What belongs there is the 31 parts of the body. This is a basic, the most basic and important thing that is called body contemplation. And the reason it doesn't belong there, as I just mentioned, is because Anapanasati is the whole of Satipatthāna. It's all you have to do. And all Satipatthāna practice is fulfilled by doing mindfulness of breathing here. I apologize if what I'm saying is getting a bit convoluted and complicated. It's because for me it is crystal clear. Yeah, I think for me it seems so clear because I've been studying these things for a long time, and I do apologize. But for those of you, some of you will probably understand because you've been doing this for a long time. Yeah, like Venerable Visudachari probably understands exactly what I'm talking about. So because of that, it's good to kind of make these things out as well. So this is one of the problems with the suttas. It's one of the problems that some of the suttas have been added to over time. The most of the suttas are actually fairly clear because they have a certain structure which makes them very stable. It's very difficult to deduct something because the structure is there. But the Satipatṭhāna Sutta, the way it is built up of elements, little blocks, and it's easy to add new blocks. And those blocks have actually been added in history, and we know that through comparative study. So the most basic form of Satipatthāna here, Kayanupassana, is the 31 parts of the body. Alternatively, all Satipatthāna can be done simply by watching the breath. That's what I recommend. It's the best way. It is the way the Buddha explains the full development of Satipatthāna practice. Okay, enough. So this is how you do this. You just review the body. You don't feel too much aversion. If you start like you want to commit suicide, you've gone too far. Yeah, then relax a little bit. Otherwise, I will get a very bad name as a teacher. Next year, there's only half of you left because the rest are dead. That would be really bad news. Yeah, so please don't do that. So then, what happens next? Next, there's a little section here called insight. Yeah, you see the heading insight there. And that already is very interesting. Yeah? Why does it say insight there? You will notice it has little brackets around it. Yeah. So does that mean when the Buddha spoke, he spoke brackets? Did the Buddha say those brackets? No, the Buddha didn't speak brackets. The reason why it is bracketed is because someone has added this to the text. The Buddha never said insight. This is actually added to the text afterwards. This is just someone trying to be helpful. Yeah. And like probably the translator actually trying to be helpful, so he writes insight. But the problem is that if you add something like that to the text, it's very easy to distort the content. How can we trust this translator? Does the translator know what they're talking about? Maybe they don't. Yeah, but when you read it, you read insight, you think, yeah, it must be insight. But actually, it is not really about insight. This next part here is about. It can be about insight, but it can also be about just calming the mind, about samatha practice. So when I said before that Satipatthāna leads to jhanas, for example, this thing which comes afterwards here is specifically said to lead to jhanas in certain suttas. And of course then it is not really about insight. Yeah, it is just about Satipatthāna practice. It is just about calming the mind. It is about insight as well, but not specifically about insight. So this is what we have to be careful. And then what happens, you see, what is interesting is that then after a while the brackets get removed, yeah, because this is what happens after a few decades. People forget who put insight there. Yeah, why are the brackets around insight? No need to have brackets, so the brackets get taken away. Then the word insight gets taken from the English back into the Pali, yeah, because surely this has probably gone missing from the Pali, and anyway, it's good to have a heading in the Pali. And after a while, these little things that get added, they then become permanent part of the original text. And we know that this is what's happening. Yeah, we can see that in many other places. Sometimes commentarial statements get reintroduced into the Pali from the commentaries going backwards. So because these things are happening, sometimes you have to be careful when you investigate these texts. And this is why it is so useful to have a fairly broad understanding of the suttas, being able to compare the Pali with the Chinese and all of this, to then kind of pare things back and get to something which is as original as possible. You don't have to worry too much, because these things are very minor problems. I'm just saying it because it makes me sound really smart, yeah? So that gives me more authority when I sound really, really smart. So I'm saying it also because there is some truth to it, of course, but it's not a major problem. So you don't have to worry too much. If you read the suttas, you are essentially getting the word of the Buddha anyway. I'm just pointing it out for you, those of you who are interested. Some of you will be interested, some of you probably won't be all that interested, but just so that you get a little bit of awareness of how the transmission of the suttas has led to a little bit of corruption over the centuries and the millennia, just to be aware of that. Okay, wow. So 11 o'clock already. So I think I'd better stop there, and then we can actually look at this little paragraph later on this afternoon when we come out again, and we'll finish off the Satipatṭhāna Sutta this afternoon. So I do apologize if what I'm saying sounds kind of strange or weird. Actually, it's very simple. It's just, again, I probably tend to complicate things too much. So please, this evening, ask questions about this. If there's anything you don't understand, sometimes you're so confused you don't even know what question to ask. Yeah. So, but just try, yeah, and see. Maybe say, "Can you please explain this a bit better," or something like that, and we will try to clarify things if at all possible. But the basic ideas I will summarize at the end of the suttas to remind you what is the most important things, those things that really matter, and you can forget about all the other stuff that I have said. In the meantime, have a nice lunch, keep on enjoying yourself, and we'll see you back here at 3 o'clock. Yeah.